Hello there people, Weston here. Parasoul has won me over with her regal manner a long time ago, and yet I've never felt like I've treated her with the respect she deserves. Now, revisiting Skullgirls after a long break, I've set out yet again to do the character justice. The following video shows me beating her fall trials, followed by an arcade mode run. Enjoy. Her first trial is simple enough: a string into a launcher, string in the air, followed by an all-kick ground sequence into a blockbuster. Putting these together on the spot is another thing entirely.
You should just retire now.
It's super effective.
The second trial is a tad more intricate, with a complicated ground combo preceding what arguably are her signature air and ground strings. These are then followed by a charge move and a blockbuster, teaching you to anticipate and charge the next move as you perform the current one.
You should just retire now.
Impossible to gauge.
Trial number 3 was simple, yet incredibly satisfying. The familiar 9-move sequence comes after throwing the opponent, then having him dragged back to you. Running the poor guy over with motorbikes rounds off the combo.
Take him into custody.
It's super effective.
The final trial sees you tossing napalm in the air and working napalm shots between your familiar combo strings. I've literally spent dozens of hours on this one. I thought I couldn't do it, but piece by piece, I've learned.
Winners don't use drugs.
It's super effective.
Alright, now for the fun part. Arcade mode, a nightmare with Parasoul. It's obviously going to be a lot less flashy than the trials, because for the trials I had all the time in the world and an opponent that would not fight back no matter what. There was no need to confirm any hits, nothing of this sort. Therefore, over here you are going to see a lot more mistakes, and you are going to see me get hurt quite a bit. For instance, tossing that napalm was not intentional, it was a mistake. To my credit though, I block or even dodge quite a few things here, even though I perform somewhat unsafe attacks at times. Speaking of unsafe attacks, the one I'm using over and over here is the jumping heavy punch. You might be rightfully so under the impression that using heavy attacks just like that is inherently unsafe, because heavy attacks should be worked into combos after light attacks, or in general requires some form of hit confirmation before you perform them. However, since this attack has such ludicrous range, I can use it to zone my opponents. They cannot possibly punish my attack with a light attack if they cannot get into range in time, and they cannot, because I use it essentially at max range. By the way, you may have noticed that string I've pulled off so many times in trials, I've managed to botch over here. I did not chase Valentine quickly enough into L, and thus she freed herself from hit stun. That's because I can't try again like in trials, but have to adapt to whatever I put myself in. Over here, I was well on my way towards completing the entire string, but unfortunately she died midway. I quickly transitioned into what will become a staple of my playstyle throughout this arcade run, namely using my napalm shots and after every other one, summoning the egret on the motorcycle. It may not be terribly exciting or flashy, but it's a safe option. And as long as the opponents cannot really counter it to any reasonable effective extent, I might as well do that.
Egret, stand down.
Especially since Parasoul is supposed to be a charge character great at zoning opponents.
I have no time for the arts.
Everybody mind your marks. Action.
As I've told you, that's what I'm going to do. It's not the only thing I can do, as I have already shown you, but it's what I'm going to do. I can do it fairly well, and unless they force me to do otherwise, I might as well continue doing it. And the AI seems to have a bit of a difficulty closing the distance. This time I actually messed up. I could have kept it up, but apparently keeping the sequence up proved more difficult to me than it should have. Of course, the AI tries to call in other characters midway, but that doesn't necessarily work out well. I should probably dodge that bomb to some extent, because now I am the one getting zoned. As always, tossing out the napalm is a mistake on my part, not some grand plan. I simply block the bomb this time instead of even attempting to jump over it and call in the egret. who takes most of the shots from the ult. Unfortunately, the tables seem to have turned, and now I am essentially pinned by Peacock, so I decide to close the distance and bash over the head to finish things off. Do note that I have 3 bars of dramatic tension, so I can unleash my firing squad, as I absolutely will.
Ready, number 13.
Having gained another ball, in the meantime, I decide to use another blockbuster to close things out. Done. Didn't really have to bother bashing her over the head myself all that much.
Egrets, dispatch.
Alright, this time I'm fighting against 3 other characters, including my alter ego. This is going to be an interesting experience. Predictably enough, she is going to spam the hell out of those napalm shots, so I'll have to be mindful of them, and potentially simply be better at tossing them out. As you can see, I have suppressed her. It's not like she's going to get over it. Of course, weaving in those egrets really helps, because she has to block them, otherwise she will get dragged all the way to the edge of the screen. I didn't have to block that guy myself, because she got hit before he got to me, so he kinda got deactivated. Here comes Cerebella, whom I have managed to suppress. After confirming my hit, who am I kidding? I just ulted blindly and it hit because she failed to block. What do you expect from me? The AI unfortunately seems to have figured out that there is enough of an interval between those shots to actually jump over the entire thing, glide through the air and close the distance. As long as you stay in the air, there's very little I can do, because these shots can only be unleashed while I'm grounded. The AI has taken the punishment for a while, but it seems clear to me that it will not get cheesed out so easily. Granted, it's not necessarily a matter of finding another approach entirely. It might simply be a matter of doing some other things, which cause the AI to huddle down underground and chicken block, after which point I can keep unleashing my shots. By the way, Big Band is notoriously terrible to fight with the napalm shots. Look at these attacks. They, give me pause, so to speak. I quickly realized that closing the distance is a necessity, as I recall fighting against him in arcade mode with Philia. As long as you remain at a distance, it pretty much doesn't really matter what you do. He has that one bashing attack that has enormous range and manages to sweep you off your feet every goddamn time. Fortunately, I managed to beat him with a few attacks.
What sort of nightmare is this?
Here comes a 1v1, me versus a single double.
All in the mind. Action.
In monochrome. Among Double's favorite moves is a shot from her gun. Nice block, by the way. Well done, Cast Me. Among her favorite moves is a shot from her gun, which I can and probably should block with this particular egret, whom I should use instead of the one on the motorcycle. I failed the familiar staple bread and butter combo yet again, and again. And this time I don't even begin pulling it off because I don't launch her into the air. That's okay though, that's okay. This time I don't even follow into the air. I'm trying though, I'm desperately trying. I've mostly decided a frontal approach might be in order, partially because she keeps closing the distance relentlessly. This time I couldn't even attempt to block her blockbuster because I was in hit stun the entire time. She's about to go down, however, since it's a 1v1, it's going to be a best of 3.
Take 2. Action.
Yes, not off of a combo, no hit confirmed, just raw super as they call it. It still worked, but it's bad fall. I got caught by a raw super raw blockbuster myself, so guess it works both ways. I was caught in attack stun, which I probably should call hit stun, and the hit stun I probably should call block stun. Anyway, I was performing an attack, which I shouldn't have, which is why I could not transition quickly enough into a block. Unfortunate, really. Also goes to show that you can't blindly spam the same move even against AI, because eventually you are going to get punished. And while I understand that the AI over here is pretty damn forgiving. Even a nightmare, that ultimately is not going to fly against anyone. Long term, I mean. Short term, I guess it's kinda fine. Of course, I finished the match by punishing unsafe moves, which I guess kinda redeems me in all of this. Goes to show that I am paying attention and not just blindly pressing buttons. Now I say that, and I immediately proceed to send out the bodyguard Egret and spam my beloved napalm shot. But this time I'm prepared for the blockbuster, probably just because of poor timing on Double's part. She probably could have timed it so that I was in the middle of unleashing my shot. Although I have no idea whether that blockbuster can actually be stopped by damage dealt to it, so there's that bit of doubt. Robo Fortune, that light sword deals heavy damage. While I would love to spam her with my shots, she might just respond with incessant beams, which I may have difficulty defending against with my bodyguard Egret, who does not last forever. Also, a major weakness of my playstyle is susceptibility to grapples. However, turns out learning those combos has paid off, as I managed to string together quite a few hits. As you may have noticed, I did manage to drop the combo midway in the air. That is positively terrifying. I think that's the most brutal animation I've seen in Skullgirls to date. I have no idea why the outtake did not work. I performed the move, it did connect. It should have swapped her out for double, but it didn't. Perhaps I should have used different inputs and therefore used the other outtake? I don't know. As it turns out, the Lady of Slaughter and She Who Mauls are legitimate honorary titles given to Sekhmet, an Egyptian goddess of war. I just got baited into the precise move I've mentioned was all too common. As far as double was concerned, I got shot. The second time I actually miscalculated the amount of time the bodyguard Egret would stay on the field. I dropped the signature combo yet again. This time I simply forget to perform one of the inputs in the air. It's supposed to be 3, I only performed 2 of them. Therefore she was able to recover in the air and counterattack. Now obviously I've managed to win overall, but still, mistakes were made.
What is it with our country and rogue projects?
Ladies and gentlemen, it's showtime!
I guess a non-insignificant population of mad scientists has managed to contribute to such a state of affairs. This time, I've had enough. I decide to take my chances. To use the bodyguard Egret over and over and over, weaving in 2 napalm shots between each call. It seems to be working. Indeed, it worked initially, but eventually Robo Fortune decided enough was enough and tried to close the distance. I will not fall prey to her beams, because I also not fall prey to the magnetic draft. It never works, at least when the AI uses it. Anyway, I am not going to fall prey to the beams. I'm going to block with the bodyguard every single time. However, some of her melee shots did make their way through. With Beowulf, I'm just going to spam her with the beams. Prevent him from getting to his beloved chair, which for whatever reason is the only thing he attempts to do here.
Take him into custody.
That's a wrap!
I have no time for cards.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's showtime!
1v1 against Squiggly. No points for guessing what I am going to attempt to do initially. Of course, I do have backup plans if that fails to deliver, but at least at the very start, it probably should work for some time. Of course, the signature combo does not come out as it should. I get thrown, I believe? I think that's a grapple on her bot. The one with the grave. Anyway, since we are in close range anyway, I did deal some damage in that close range, and I decided to back off and use my firing squad because I absolutely had the dramatic tension to do it, so why not? Now I will simply attempt to blow her up with my napalm shots, which predictably enough elicits a response of her trying to close the distance, as is wise to do. Now unfortunately she cannot possibly string together combos that require charging. That's not gonna happen. I'm not going to give her the time to do that. She would have to disable me in some way, which is not happening. I'm not closing the distance consciously, by the way. That was just an accident. I close things out with the blockbuster, with the sniper,
Player one wins.
with the silent scope, as they call it.
Target confirmed.
My goodness, red on green is
Cameras
gorgeous.
rolling and action.
She gets the first hit, and I realize that I probably should be using my bodyguards against her. Do I realize that though? Do I realize it quickly enough? I realize it eventually, at least. Of course, I have 3 opponents against myself, thus they will be a lot weaker individually. But there's also a lot more variety. There's the possibility of them swapping for one another if they need to. I get grabbed because I failed to get a hit in before the egret gets to me. That's okay. She's already below half health. A few missed inputs resulted in me tossing napalm as they usually do, but thankfully I managed to pull off a decent string. Then out comes Squiggly, with her usual inability to reasonably close the distance or really deal any damage from afar. The only reason she got those hits in was because I messed up my inputs. Here comes Philia. She's obviously mobile as hell, and I'm not. Thankfully, I'm familiar with the character enough to know her strengths and weaknesses, to know the sort of moves she might want to pull off against me, and thus to be able to counter them with relative ease. She does not have much in terms of range damage. She could try to perform some ringlet spears, but that's probably not going to happen. She tries to close the distance, as is smart to do, but ultimately I deal with the situation. I could push block, but I prefer to just drop her to the ground with my heavy hits from a reasonable distance. I think I could play safer. I think if the AI was smart enough, I could get punished by getting hit with light attacks as I try to wind up my heavy ones. But that does not happen. In fact, what does happen is a Fenrir into Real, as I sometimes do. So the AI is learning, but it's also learning the bad parts of my playstyle. the horrible, atrocious mistakes I make. It might not be learning at all, it might just be making these mistakes all on its own, which is not much of an improvement, mind you. I decided to close the distance and deal with Squiggy that way. Messy,
What a tragedy.
but effective.
All right, show's over.
I will spare you the horrible, atrocious, gruesome details of how the fight went on the first couple of times. And I will also speed up this particular part. Mind you, this is from the same run, but there were a few runs before it. Even so, there is still not much to see in this final set of attempts at beating Red Mary with Parasoul solo in arcade mode. It's the same concept over and over, just executed with slight imperfections here and there. She gets the first hit in a couple of times, at which point she can zone me almost indefinitely, and there's very little I can do against that. I have figured out our way of dealing with her. I have no clue whether it is what I am supposed to do against her, but it tends to work. I am not unleashing a string of intricate combos upon her by preventing her from using her abilities, by putting her in hit stun. I'm relying on the fact that she cannot block, as far as I can tell. She never blocks. She may counterattack by disrupting my attacks, but she can never block herself. Therefore, if something hits, it hits. And if I string it into a combo, it follows. Most of the time, if I were to use a heavy attack against an opponent, what could happen might be that the opponent blocks, and then after blocking unleashes a light attack against me. Therefore, with me still being in hit stun, by delivering the attack, by being exhausted after the attack, and them presumably being in a shorter block stun, after initially blocking the attack, they're able to do something while I am helpless. With her being completely unable to block, that becomes a non-issue. I don't have to worry about her blocking because she cannot do that. Therefore, even though against most opponents that would be suicidal, I can unleash heavy attack after heavy attack against her. And as long as the heavy attacks are delivered quickly enough themselves, they don't have a long wind up, and they're based around the idea that a wise opponent will just see them coming, block them, and then counterattack. Against Mary, these work perfectly well. I unleash them, they connect quickly, she cannot counterattack, and since she's not in block stun but in hit stun, I can continue pounding her with all sorts of attacks I can possibly string together. Most likely dropping the combo midway. Most likely not really stringing these things into proper combos, but just having tiny spaces in between, during which hopefully she doesn't manage to unleash an ability. Also, sorry for using the term hit stun ambiguously, it's still not clearly delineated in my mind. I still get confused and use the term hit stun to denote that an opponent got hit and therefore they are stunned. Even though in fighting games I am supposed to use the term hit stun to denote the idea that I am hitting someone and therefore I am stunned. Or that they are hitting me and they are stunned because of hitting me. With people being in hurt stun when they are hurt and they are stunned because of that. If they get hit and are stunned because they got hit, they are in hurt stun, not in hit stun. Sorry, old habits die hard. Never mind that little tangent, look at my tenacity out there. Look at my dedication. A lesser man would have given up by now, but not me. Even though I fail and fail again, I keep at it, I persist. I try again, I get back up. And attempt it one more time. Ultimately, I've settled on what I refer to as the pogo method. Essentially, I perform the L string over and over. The free attack input that you might have grown to be familiar with. The one I usually do once I toss my enemies into the air. The one I do before they fall down alongside me. The one I then follow up by 2 light kicks, 2 medium kicks, and then usually 2 hits with the umbrella. Except this time I don't continue the string into those usual hits. I just keep at it. I jump back up and perform the 3 hits. Over and over and over, essentially until Mary dies. Or I die trying. I don't really correct based on the situation at hand and mistakes made, other than just closing the distance and trying the pogo method again. Here's the thing, this, in an ironic twist of fate, is exactly the same thing happening to me as I did to my opponents previously. I am getting zoned by this opponent and am faced with so many projectiles that I cannot possibly cope. Even if I attempt to block them, which significantly lowers the damage they deal to me, I am then permanently in block stun, and more projectiles are headed my way at an incredible, unbearable pace. The moment I get stranded in such a state, I am essentially done for. There's very little I can do. I can't just block her hits and recover. As I am blocking the hits, she's unleashing more and more stuff upon me, and she does not run out. I run out of time or health, whichever comes first. I desperately need to close the distance immediately and keep barraging her with damage. That prevents her from tossing all these things my way, mostly. And it seems to be the only way to victory. I've tried beating her at her own game. It did not work. I'm not ruling it out as a possibility. Perhaps it can be done. Perhaps I could win against her by using my bodyguard Egret and all the napalm shots in the world. occasionally blocking or jumping over those huge rams made of skulls. I've tried it. It failed miserably. She dished out way more damage than I possibly could. And of course, every time I got hit, all my napalm shots got disintegrated, thereby nullifying any damage they could have possibly dealt. If you can dodge as much as you possibly can and block everything else, maybe, just maybe, you can take care of her from a distance using napalm shots. I sincerely doubt it, though. Go ahead and prove me wrong. To summarize, here are the problems. First of all, closing the distance and dealing the initial damage in order to stop her from unleashing attacks. Second of all, keeping it up, not dropping the pseudo combo in the middle, not allowing her any time to react. As you can see, the pogo method is working quite well, but the third problem, of course, is dealing with her third form, which, in spite of considerable success I may have with the first and second one, proves to be quite a challenge, essentially no matter what. She floats in midair, zips around the battlefield at fairly high speed, and tends to unleash a barrage of skulls and skull rams at me, relentlessly. She holds nothing back in her third form. Now the only thing I need is essentially a tiny break, the ability to finally spend my meter, my dramatic tension, and unleash a firing squad upon her, and then deal 1 or 2 hits to finish her off. That's it. So close indeed, but this is the time!
Quiet on the set. Showtime.
I close the distance immediately and begin pogoing. Pogoing my heart out. It's actually just the 2 hits. It's the heavy punch and the heavy kick, both in the air, of course. Works on the first form, works just as well on the second one, as long as you manage to keep her relatively immobile in a corner. I bash for the first 2 forms, receiving 0 damage, but the moment she ascends into her final form, I get barraged by everything. Look at my health go down in spite of me blocking. I even miss a few things. I block low here in spite of the fact that I had to block high to defend from that shadow. I'm desperately trying to find an opportunity, and I eventually get it. I unleash my firing squad, hit her 4, 5, say 6 times or so, and barely get the last hit in before she got me.
Ah, come on.
That was it. That was me beating arcade mode on Nightmare with Parasoul. I honestly don't think I could have done better. Not because it's impossible to do better, mind you, but I think I have ultimately reached the limit of my abilities. I have tried this a couple of times. I have tried in the past to play Parasoul, and I believe this is as good as you're gonna get. And this is as good as I am going to get, for that matter. Thanks for watching, and you will see me elsewhere.